All right, we're talking solving equations with multiplication and division, which what that sounds like is that it's going to be multiplication property of equality and the division property of equality. And before you go, I don't know what that means, you did it already with the addition property of equality, and you did it with the subtraction property of equality. You don't need to know that POE part. I just was abbreviating it as I was saying it. So anyway, with addition property of equality, here's what we did. We said we have a left side of the equation and we have a right side of the equation. And you're like, yep, I remember that. And then you also are, let's just be honest, you are smart enough to know that, listen, a number minus 4, if it equals 10, that answer is 14. But here is how we use the addition property of equality, is that we are going to add 4 to both sides. The reason we add it to both sides is because if we add it to this side, things are not equal anymore. But if we add it to both sides, things are still equal. Yay! So what happens now is negative 4 plus 4 is 0. And that leaves us with this x. He drops down because he's the only thing left on this side of the equation anymore, right? And then now on the right side, we got 14, which remember we said it clearly equals 14. So why is this the addition property of equality if we're subtracting right here? Why is this the subtraction property of equality if there's addition right there? Well, it's because we have to do the opposite to solve. And in fact, what do you mean solve? When I say solve, I mean we are getting the variable by itself. That's what it means to solve, okay, to solve. So right here, what's with our variable is plus 4. So how we get rid of that is we do the opposite. We subtract 4, and we subtract 4 from both sides because that would make them equal, right? If you do it to one side and then the other, it's equal. And now these 4s, 4 minus 4 is 0. Oh yay, x is by itself, x equals 6, because 10 minus 4 is 6. And if you're still not quite sure what's going on, I brought back our seesaw, our mobile, whatever you want to call it. We've done a couple different versions of it. And right now, this dog plus this weight is equal to 8. So we could write this as like dog plus 2 equals 8 pounds. And again, we are smart enough to go, oh yeah, so that dog weighs 6 pounds, right? Because 6 plus 2 is 8. Okay, but if we had to, like, I'm sure dogs don't really weigh exactly like 8.000 pounds, right? Like, what dog has ever weighed that, right? So here's what we could do, and actually to solve this exact equation is we have this 2 weight right here. Why don't we subtract it from this side? And if we subtract it from that side, well, then that's going to make our seesaw out of balance, unless we take 2 pounds away from that, in which case it would balance out pretty perfectly, right? So that's what's going on, is we're solving, we're getting the variable by itself. We are doing that by doing the opposite. We're doing the opposite. If you're like, what do you mean the opposite? We just did it here. Instead of subtracting 4, we're going to add 4. Instead of adding 4, we're going to subtract 4. So why am I saying all that? Because check it out. The multiplication property of equality is looking at this and saying that is x divided by 3. And if you're thinking, no, that's a fraction. Fractions go with dividing, you guys. Because the only way we have a fraction is if you say, hey, here's a candy bar, and I cut it into equal pieces, and then it's 1/4 and 1/4 and 1/4 and 1/4. Why is it 1/4? Because that's how big the piece is, and that's how many pieces I have. How big? How many? How big? How many? How big? How many? So, how how big is this number? I don't know. But I know that it's being divided by 3, right? So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to rewrite this since I drew all over it. X over 3 equals -6, okay? There are 2 sides to the equation. What is happening to the x right now? It is being divided. So the opposite of that, to undo that, to get the x by itself, we're going to do the opposite of divide, which is multiply. So I'm going to do that. And I have to do it to both sides, okay? What's going to happen is you, in a moment, will be able to solve it right here, okay? But that being said, I said in a moment, right? Here's what I want you to do now is I want you to jump down here with me and see what is happening exactly. So what is happening when we multiply at 3 times x over 3? Well, this is really 3 over 1. And when you multiply fractions, you go straight across, and we would get 3x over 3. And now we can simplify this because we can divide by 3 on top, divide by 3 on bottom, and we would get 1x over 1. But we're not going to write it like that. We're just going to call it x. And in fact, I only do this kind of like writing right here whenever I am doing stuff with fractions. Normally, if I was dealing with this thing right here, I would just cross out the 3's and go, yep, there's my x all by itself. There it is. So remember when I said up here, hang on, when I said right here, you're going to do something like this, but this is what's happening, okay? So here's what you are going to do because you're a pro. If you're like, I'm not a pro, you're a pro. These 3's cancel. How do I know they cancel? Well, that's what we did over here and over here, right? Like our intention is to get this x by itself. And so that's why we multiplied by 3, and now it's just left with x. So by the way, I'm going to kind of draw my arrow over here because I've filled up all this area over here. So don't be freaked out that he moved to this side. He's not really on this side, okay? I'm just moving everything down over here, okay? Okay. So we get equals -18. We're done. X equals -18. And so if you think about it, it's, hey, I have 18 things. If I divide that by 3, I'm going to get 6, right? And it happens that it's negative, so that's why our answer is negative, right? Right. So jump in here to A with me. X is being divided by 5. How do I know that? Well, it's in a fraction. So the opposite of divided by 5 is multiply by 5. I didn't put parentheses around this 5, but there, I just did. What will happen is the 5's cancel, leaving me with the x. And now x equals -10, because that's what -2 times 5 is. That's it. And again, you can check your answer by saying -10 divided by 5 is -2. Yay! So now go over here and talk about the division property of equality. Well, so, and the reason I'm kind of hesitating is the division property, I don't see no division here. You're right, I don't either. But that's because I see multiplication. And the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide by -4 on both sides. And one thing I'd like to point out is this right here, does it remind you of this right here where we had 3 over 3x? Yeah, it kind of does, because division and multiplication are similar, just like addition and subtraction are similar. They have some overlapping qualities, right? Okay, so these -4's cancel, and we get y. There it is. One thing I want to warn you about, warning. You will be tempted to say that, 4 divided by 4, that's 0. That's not 0. This is literally, this 4 over 4 is, I have $4, I have 4 friends. Each friend is getting $1. or a ticket or whatever, right? It's not that they're going to get 0. That's crazy talk. So we have y equals negative, let's see, I think that is 4.5. And don't worry about figuring out the fraction decimal part of it right now. I just want you to know that, hey, we divided, and it divided on both sides, and that's what we got, okay? So if you're like looking at this paper, you notice there's a B, a C, and a D. I'm just going to do C and D right now because I want to talk about B kind of on its own. So what I'd like for you to do is pause the video and try these two on your own. So ready, set, pause. And we're back. So what's happening is we have two separate equations, right? There's a left side, there's a right side, right? Okay, great. On this side, we are going to divide by 1.5. How come? Because negative 1.5 is multiplying that in, right? And so that means we will divide in order to get in by itself. So these negative 1.5s cancel, leaving us with n equals negative 2. Negative 2. Over here to the right, 6 is being multiplied by d, so we will divide by 6. And you get d equals 4. Another warning is that I see people do this all the time. If they had 6d equals 24. Now, when it's 24, I don't know if they're as tempted to do this, but people will often accidentally just divide by, like, the number that pops into their head first. Here's what this is. Like, you're allowed to do that as long as you do it to both sides. But here's what you get. That becomes 1, and this becomes 1d over 4, because 6 can divide 24 4 times. And look at this. Are you better, or I don't know if you're better, right? Like, this took one step. This was one step in the wrong direction, okay? So just so you know, keep it with getting rid of the number that's with the variable, right? Right. Next, B. The reason that I really want to talk about this one is because there's a couple different ways we can solve him, okay? First thing is, you look at this and you might think, okay, well, what exactly we're going to do? Like, I'm pretty sure I know the answer is A equals 24, because listen, if you just took that negative and slapped it in front of 24, well, then it would be negative 24, right? Yeah, you're right. But this is learning how to dribble the basketball. Remember that we need to learn how are we supposed to deal with that negative. So let me show you how to deal with the negative. It's really negative 1a. So it's like they're multiplying, and that means we could divide both sides by negative 1. So negative 1 divided by negative 1, believe it or not, is just 1. Yes, they cancel each other out, and you get a. You don't have to write that 1. You could just write a. But now, check this out. We divided, and we got 24. Okay, so that's the correct answer, is that a would equal 24. But here is what I'm going to do over here. I'm not going to divide this by negative 1. I'm going to multiply it by negative 1. Because what is a negative 1 times a negative 1? It's a positive 1. And so what I'd like for you to see is that we just multiplied. I can't spell multiply. Yeah, just multiply. There we go. Here we divided, here we multiplied, and yet we got 24 the same, right? That's what it's like to deal with a negative. And I just wanted you to see that because in the future, you will do stuff like that. Next is let's talk about solving equations using reciprocals. So first thing is, what the heck is a reciprocal? Well, let's give some examples. If I had 2/3 and I said I'm going to find the reciprocal of it, guess what? It is 3/2. And if you're like, well, that doesn't seem very different. I mean, it is pretty different, isn't it? What if I said, hey, now I'm going to take negative 1/2 and I want the reciprocal? It's negative 2/1. I think you notice that this just flipped, this just flipped, and guess what? I was drawing the arrows going this direction, but I could also draw them going this direction. If you started with 3 over 2 and you want the reciprocal, it's 2 over 3. If you started with negative 2 over 1, it's negative 1 over 2. And then another thing about this is also equal to just negative 2, right? So if you were to say, hey, what's the reciprocal of negative 2? You could say it's negative 1/2. Okay? So that's a reciprocal. And here's where, like, you gotta focus up. If you're bored by this point, sorry, but focus up. What we're doing is we are going to solve this one now. This negative 4/5 is multiplying x. So you would think, okay, multiplying. Well, hey, up here, when we were multiplying, what we did was division. And yes, you can do division. You can. In fact, let's do that. So if we had negative 4/5 x, we can divide by negative 4/5. But now we're dividing by fractions. So, okay, well, that's okay. Negative 4/5 divided by negative 4/5. Now, this part is actually not that bad because negative 4/5 divided by negative 4/5, that's just going to be 1, right? Like, anytime you divide a number by itself, you would just get 1. But let me show you a little bit why that happens, okay? Because, as you know, when you multiply with fractions, you actually multiply and you flip the second one, right? So you end up getting 20 over 20, which is 1, right? The reason that this is worth talking about is because if you multiply each side by the reciprocal, you're going to end up multiplying this by the reciprocal as well. Now, if you're like, well, wouldn't I be dividing it? Yeah, I was trying to show you that, listen, dividing by that number is multiplying by the reciprocal. Look, there's the reciprocal. We divided by this number, and it turns out that we are multiplying by the reciprocal, right? So now let's zoom in on, okay, well, hang on, before we zoom in, this side, when we multiply by the reciprocal, cancels that out, and we're left with just the x. We're happy with that, okay? Right here, this is multiplying by that reciprocal, and just like over there, we are going to multiply by fractions. So you multiply straight across, and you get negative 5 times negative 8 is positive 40, and 4 times 1 is 4, and 40 divided by 4 is 10, okay? If you're a little lost, let's try this one out. Right now, z is being multiplied by 3 over 2. And again, because we're multiplying, you might think, we shall do division, but we're not going to do division. We are going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by 2/3 on both sides. And if you're wondering where I get 2/3 from, it's the reciprocal of 3 over 2, okay? So what happens on the right side is the 3's cancel, the 2's cancel, and I'm left with z. And on the left side, I go 2 times negative 6, that's negative 12. 3 times 1, the invisible 1 that was there, and that's 3. So we get z equals negative 4. And we're done. So down here, again, there's 3 of these. I want you to try them, but I'm also going to help you with them. So pause the video. Now let's you and me do them. All right. Negative 8 over 5 is multiplying b. Normally we would divide, and in fact you are welcome to divide. I'm just telling you that the same thing is going to happen if you multiply by the reciprocal. The exact same outcome. It's just it will maybe look a little faster, okay? So these cancel, leaving me with b. On the right side of the equation, we will get negative 25 over 8. And really, that's good enough for me. But if you would like to write it as a mixed number, it's negative 3 and 1/8. So either of those works for me. Right here, we are multiplying h by 3/8. If you would like to divide by 3/8, be my guest. You are fully welcome to, but I would like to multiply by 8/3 on both sides. Where'd I get 8/3 from? It's the reciprocal. So the 8s and the 3s cancel, leaving me with h. And on the right side, I get negative 72/3. That's one way you could do it. Or guess what? You know how we canceled here and here? It's not that we just canceled, we reduced, right? Because it would have ended up looking like this, right? You would have gotten 20 over 20. Well, so we can actually cancel early, just like we did here. We could say, hey, 3 goes into 9 3 times. And now that's a 1. And what we could do is just 3 times 8 is 24. And that's it. It's just negative 24. So all 3 of, well, I shouldn't say all 3. That turns into that. H is equal to negative 24. Cool, huh? G is negative 2/3 is multiply x. We're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Where'd the reciprocal come from? It's that. Flipped upside down. 3's cancel, 2's cancel, leaving me with x. And then, again, we're going to be a little bit of a pro mover here. This 2 can cancel that 14 and make it 7. So now what we're going to do is 7 times 3, actually negative 7, right, because of that negative, and we get negative 21. If you didn't see that and you're like, oh man, I went ahead and multiplied 3 and 14, well, you would have gotten negative 42 over 2 equals x, and it would have turned into that, okay? So that was your intro to solving equations with multiplication and division. If you're wondering, I mean, we flew by this one pretty quickly, and it seems like we did a couple more of these, but hey, if you got questions, let me know. I'll see you later.